Today at the Intelligence Forum's Who Are You podcast, we're privileged to have Angela Browning, who's going to share some thoughts on dementia and end-of-life care. Thank you very much indeed for being with us today, Angela.
Very pleased to be here, Harry.
I'd like to start by asking you about your professional journey and political journey to where you are today.
Well, I entered the House of Commons in 1992 at the age of 45. So I was slightly older than most of my intake in 92. I'd done other things. Prior to coming into Parliament, I'd been running my own training business, business training, having worked previously for a manufacturer, a market-leading manufacturer in the white goods market. But I actually started out in life as a cookery teacher. And on the way, I did a little bit of nursing for a couple of years, like many women, I suppose. When my children came along, I sort of boxed and coxed with jobs to different hours that were needed. I probably didn't start out in life wanting to be a member of Parliament. It sort of grew as I got older. And by my sort of early mid-30s, I thought it was something I would like to do. But by then I was running my own business. And I thought I would give it two shots. That's two opportunities of 5 years each election, of roughly 5 years apart. And I decided if I didn't make it in 10 years, I'd carry on and grow the business a bit more.
And obviously it worked well for you.
It did. And I was very fortunate. I fought my first seat in Crewe and Nantwich in 1987 in Cheshire, but I'd lived for many years in Devon. And after I was beaten in Crewe and Nantwich by just over 1,000 votes. And when I came back to Devon, I found that the sitting member of Parliament, Sir Robin Maxwell Hislop, for the Tiverton seat, was planning to retire. And so I put my name in the ring and went through the interview process. And I was fortunate then to be chosen to fight a seat where I'd lived for many years, which I think I've always felt was a great bonus.
I always have to ask. I mean, being in. We'll get to the main topic in a second, but the being in the House of Lords is that a vastly different world to the House of Commons?
Oh yes, vastly different, and I suspect vastly different now to when I first came in. I came in 2010 when I retired from the Commons after 18 years in the Commons, and I've been in the Lords now for 15 years. But as I observe the Commons today compared to when I left it in 2010, it is a very different place. They have social media, of course, which of course we didn't have. In fact, computers came in while I was in the Commons, and mobile phones and all that they do now. I can remember rather jokingly saying, "Oh well, I'm going before it becomes compulsory to have a blog." Well, now,
Yeah.
of course, as I observe it from the Lords, I feel that a lot of those new MPs, the ones who've come in the last few elections, are almost hidebound by the need to feed this terrible master, the social media, and it has its benefits, of course, but it has made it a very different job.
So at this podcast interview today, dementia and end-of-life care, where in your view do we stand on this subject today in the UK? Where are we?
Well, not just because I myself am getting older, but of course, as you get older, you go through a lot of very personal experiences of family and friends who age, have different conditions and the way in which they pass from this world. So a lot of my interest has been gained from that personal experience. So in the House of Lords now and the House of Commons, where we have all party groups, I co-chair the all party group on Alzheimer's. I'm a vice chair of the Parkinson's Disease Society, and I spend quite a lot of my time looking at the development of some of these diseases which are predominantly of old age, but not exclusively of old age, because we know dementia and, for example, Parkinson's can affect people in the younger years as well as old age. But as we age, the way we age, the medicines and the treatments and things that we have available to us now in our generation, things that weren't available even to our parents' generation, have made the enjoyment of life in old age so much different to previous generations. But equally, I am concerned about some of the ways in which people have to cope with that final part of life, which is the very end of life and how we pass from this world. And I feel we've still got a lot to do to get that right.
I mean, how do we make some of the practicalities? I'm sure you already are doing this, but how do we make some of the practicalities, like legal practicalities, and then people that are not in a position to make decisions themselves? How do we streamline that and make that easier?
Well, capacity you've mentioned is very, very important, because once you lose capacity, decisions are made for you by other people. I think the big thing is, who are those people who make the decisions? Now, clearly, we're all subject to medical advice and what medics say at certain times of our life. But one of the big things that I advise people to do before they even get near to old age is to take out a lasting power of attorney. There are two types, as you know, of lasting power of attorney. There's one for health and well-being and another one for finance. And I sat in the Commons years ago on the Mental Capacity Bill, which is now an Act of Parliament, which sought to put more in place for people to make their wishes known and to legally ensure that if they did lose capacity, the people who were involved in making decisions on their behalf based on how well they know them were the people they had already legally nominated to become the people who doctors and social services and others would have by law to listen to, which I think is really important. I don't think people always realize that it's too late. Once you've lost capacity, you can't sign any legal documents, let alone the lasting power of attorney. So you need to do it early.
It brings me to the next question, the important role of carers. And how do we make their lives easier? Because that's a challenge.
It is a challenge, and I've been a carer for most of my adult life. It's not a secret. I have a son, and now a son and a daughter-in-law, both on the autism spectrum. And my husband had Alzheimer's. I looked after him at home with care coming in to support me at home, looking after him. And it can be very tough for carers. I think I've been fortunate in that, certainly as far as my husband was concerned, I was able to pay privately for carers to come in and help with the physical work of caring for him, particularly. But I realise a lot of people aren't in that position. And I think as a country, we take carers for granted. And very often, carers are as old as the people they're caring for. So they themselves will feel, however much they love the person, they will feel the strain of that responsibility.
And the other question I'd like to ask you is about hospices and their role, and what more can we do for them, and what with the challenges they've had with cost of living increases, for example. You know more about this than me, so I'm going to hand it to you.
Well, hospices are just marvellous, and I've been into many hospices and seen personally the work that they do. And the staff are so caring. And of course, hospices cover the age range. There are specific children's hospices as well as adults. And then we have, in England, we have 170 hospices. I was very pleased to see that since the Labour government have come in, they have provided more funding for hospices, primarily on things like capital works rather than the day-to-day cost of employing staff. But so far, 100 million has gone into hospices this year, which I really welcome. And I know the hospices have paid tribute to the fact that that money has been forthcoming, because, we hear about hospices and how wonderful they are, but I don't think people always realise that actually the government only contributes about a third of the cost. The other 2/3 of the cost, a lot of that, of course, is staffing costs, has to be raised by hospices themselves. And so, apart from the permanent job of caring for people in the hospice, they have a permanent job of having to raise money all the time. Quite a challenge.
So the last question I'm going to ask you is, how would you like things to look if you in an ideal world, for caring, for hospices, for the whole of the end of life debate? How would you like it to look?
How I'd like it to look is that people who choose, and I think the majority of people choose, that at the end of life, they want to be cared for and they want to die at home. Now, I realise that isn't always possible, but what I would like to see is much more care delivered in the home. And by care, I mean really good quality care, not people dropping in for 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there in a day, but certainly as people reach the end of their life in those final weeks, that they have really good empathetic care that relieves them of pain, but also that they're not on their own for most of the day. I would like to see a lot more spiritual, I'm not necessarily saying religious, but more spiritual care, and that people are comforted when they need that comfort. I think we just have to remember that very often with very elderly people, they don't always have near relatives at hand. And I would like to see that delivery of not just the practical medical care, but other levels of care that make it something that is peaceful and is something that we could all be proud of.
So Baroness Browning, thank you, or Angela Browning, thank you so much indeed for giving your time this afternoon to the Intelligence Forum's Who Are You podcast. I'd also like to thank Christina Check for engineering this, and thank you, a great privilege.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.